And welcome to Thrift Shop Biography. This is the one about Sebastian Bach. Thank you for listening. Hello, Cleo.
Oh, hi, Richard.
How are you?
All right.
So, did you enjoy the book this week?
Yes, I did. It's another rock and roll, debauchery, crazy, interesting book.
Yeah.
By Sebastian Bach, who was the lead singer of Skid Row, metal band.
So, did you know anything about Sebastian Bach before you read this book?
I loved that first album, Skid Row. It was my first metal album. The only metal album I've ever bought, ever.
Really?
Yes, I actually bought it and I absolutely loved it.
I did not know this about you. You were a teenage metalhead.
I mean, yeah, it was called metal then. You listen to it now and it's really light. It's really, really light. It's Guns N' Roses on a par, you know.
Yeah, but I didn't even know you were remotely into this type of music.
Yeah. Well, we do learn in this book that 18 and Life, was it 18 and Life? No, I Remember You was the prom song of the year. So it isn't a massive stretch that I bought that album.
Yeah.
Because girls liked it, because there were a couple of ballads in there. And my brother used to torment me with playing Sweet Little Sister, which is about a dodgy girl. It was his little sister. Yeah. Yeah, it's a cracking album, it really is. It's kind of just pop hits, really, with a loud guitar.
God, I had no idea.
Metal people will kill me.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so that's the only thing I know. That's all I knew. And he's utterly beautiful.
Isn't he?
He's just beautiful.
Yeah.
What do you know about him?
Absolutely nothing.
Really? Nothing at all?
No, when you found this book, this doesn't happen very often with this podcast, but I'd say this is one of the very few times where I absolutely knew nothing about the person before I read it.
Wow. Do you know Skid Row, though?
Oh, I know Skid Row, yeah.
You know the songs.
When you first said I've got Sebastian Bach, I thought I'd heard of him, but it's because there's a actor now called Sebastian Stan, and so I thought it was him. And then when I got the book,
really?
I was just like, oh, no, okay, it's a guy from Skid Row. Well, yeah, I've heard of Skid Row, but I couldn't tell you anything about them.
Wow. Blimey.
So this was a complete new experience for me.
Out of nowhere comes this incredible looking man with long hair, beautiful face. Yeah, I've got on my inside cover of my book, I've got this whole pin-up poster of him. It's so long. He is he even says something like he's like a long stick of celery or something, yeah. But he is. He's 6'4".
He's so pretty.
He's beautiful.
Do you know what? I think he looks like Britney Spears.
Do you?
There's a lot of photos in the book, a lot of photos. And
yes.
There's not a single bad photo of him his entire life.
You're right. And sometimes everyone's grinning and looking like twats, and there's him just looking up at the camera.
Gosh, there's one of him on a roller coaster and everybody is gurning.
Except
and he has a funny look on his face, but even when he has a funny roller coaster look on his face, he's still really handsome.
Yeah, he is. I reckon he must have worked really hard looking in the mirror. He knows what he's doing with his face. He's very determined. He's determined to succeed, isn't he? You can tell.
Yeah.
Or he's determined to pull women. I don't know what it is. But anyway.
I do find it interesting, peculiar really, how heavy metal, how the men in bands really do look like women.
Yeah, I know.
But not like in a new romantic way where men wear makeup and women's clothes, but they still look like men in makeup. In heavy metal, a lot of the time they actually look like really gorgeous women.
They actually do, and yet they're the straightest blokes who wouldn't even consider that that's odd at all.
I know, I find it so interesting.
Yeah.
And women like it, don't they?
They love it.
Don't they, Cleo, eh?
Yes. They do.
Anyway, well, should we just do it?
Okay.
Let's do Sebastian Bach. Sebastian Bach.
Or as I say, Sebastian.
What's the difference?
Sebastian.
Oh,
sounds different.
Sebastian.
Oh, I don't know how he says it.
Well, I just copy it. It's because
but his dad calls him Bass.
Bass.
Baz.
Baz.
Or does he say bass? Or does he say Bas? Or Baz. Some people call him Baz.
Baz, Bach. But it's an unusual surname, Bach, actually. Do you know, like Johann Sebastian Bach? So he must have been named after the composer.
Well, no, because it says in this book that his actual birth name is Sebastian Philip Björk. Philip. Why is Philip funny? But it is for a rock star's middle name. But Björk, yeah, Bierk. God knows why. Oh, I know why. Because he's descended from the Norwegians.
Oh, they anglicised it. Well, no, it's not anglicised.
No, Bach.
The Norwegians went to Germany before they came to America. Not the Norwegians, his Norwegians ended up in Germany and then they came to America. So perhaps when they went from Norway to Germany, they Germanized the name
it
to Bach.
Yes.
So he was destined to have a musical career because they named him after a prolific composer.
Well, that was his surname though, but his first name, they named him after a bloke from, what's it called? Loving Spoonful. John Sebastian.
Oh, yeah.
They're really into music, that family. They're mad for music.
So it's pure coincidence that he's named Sebastian. He's named Sebastian Bach and the composer is Johann Sebastian Bach. That's a coincidence.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, parents were real hippies.
Yeah, they were real hippies, weren't they?
They're both really beautiful, aren't they, his mum and dad? You can see how they made the gorgeous baby.
Yeah, and they were really cool. They're really alternative
Really
people.
cool. And there's a lot of photos in the book. It's like they had their professional photographer following them around.
Yeah, you're quite right. Yeah, but they are artists.
Some of the photos are like photos out of magazines, and it's just of them with their baby hanging out.
They are. I tell you what's weird with this book. He puts photos all the way through it, almost every page.
Yeah.
And he never writes underneath who they are.
Yeah.
Ever.
I
So
know.
you're left making it up. And there's one of probably his dad, with a moustache playing the cello or something, with a big beard. And then this totally naked woman, quite full-bellied.
Yes.
With also a moustache, just standing by him. And I'm assuming that's his mum.
Well, I thought she looks bigger than his mum.
Yeah, but she might have knocked out a couple of kids by then. Because she's very obviously slim when they first meet, but then she has some kids. But all you get from it is he had quite a bohemian upbringing.
Yeah, he did, didn't he?
Definitely.
Well, his dad was a teacher and is an art teacher, right?
Yeah.
And his mum was a nurse, and they met in the emergency room because one night his dad was hanging out with his mates and they were doing that crazy jackass thing of getting drunk and riding on the top of cars.
Surfing the car.
And when the dad was on top of the car, the driver put the brake on and his dad flew off the top and got a face full of gravel. So they took him to the emergency room, and the nurse that came to tend him was Sebastian Bach's future mother.
Yeah.
So that's how his mum and dad met.
Yeah,
It's quite a
the
good
apple does
story.
not fall far from the tree.
Yeah, so his dad was all up for raucous behaviour right there at the beginning.
Yes. And they had a lot of adventures. Sebastian Bach was born in the Bahamas, and then they lived in California for a bit, and then they moved to Canada, I think when he was about 5 or something. He is basically Canadian, but he hadn't moved around a lot before then and had a lot of different influences. And then his dad started an art gallery. So that's a proper hippie commune place, isn't it?
Yeah.
And all around their house is just hippies and artists, musicians. And he gets obsessed by Kiss at a very young age.
Yeah.
The band.
But I think from the image of Kiss initially, because he said that him and his dad used to walk through the arcade, and one of the prizes on show was a big poster of Kiss. And he said that he always used to look at that and think, wow, I love them. And I think it was before he heard the music, because he's his dad's an artist. Little Sebastian's very much into comic books and he collects them.
Yeah.
And Kiss are very, very visual. I mean, they look like comic book characters, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
And I think when he says that he used to look at that poster of Kiss and want it, I actually thought, had he actually listened to their music at that point? Maybe he had, but I kind of wondered whether he was drawn in visually at first.
Yeah, because he was just immediately drawn to it. And then there's pictures in the book of him about 8 where he's got all the makeup on and he's staring with those eyes at the camera again. Yeah, and you're like, bloody hell.
It's
he already
amazing.
looks about 18, like he's in a band.
Yeah, it's a fully realised costume, isn't it? It's not just like kids. He looks like he could be in a Kiss tribute band. It's really good.
Yeah, he really does. Yeah, the confidence in him, the way he's holding himself, looking, you think, bloody hell, yeah, he's already there.
Yeah.
It's amazing. But then, his mate comes along on his bike and says, look, do you want to come audition for the church choir? He's like, thinking no. He's only 8. And then he says, you get paid. He's like, yes. Yeah, he gets paid $4 a week. I don't know. But that's loads of money when you want to buy comics and you're only 8.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And he's been singing his whole life anyway, because his mum sings. They all sing.
His mum used to put him on the table when her friends came round and she'd make him sing Puppy Love by Donny Osmond.
It's all connected.
It's all connected.
I know. You see this amazing rock dude who's totally debauched and crazy, and you find out he's in a church choir. He sings Puppy Love. Doesn't make any sense.
Do you know what? Celine Dion's mum used to stand her on the table and make her sing to her friends.
Yeah.
So if you want your kid to be a world-famous singer, you need to get this
Stick him on
started
the
early.
kitchen table.
First concert in your kitchen.
Yes.
Bring your friends around.
Yeah, true.
I don't know what they made Celine Dion sing. Although I do know her first public performance was a rendition of Physical by Olivia Newton-John at a golf club when she was 10 years old.
Yeah, so
the
bizarre.
information we pick up reading these books is so useful.
I know. Right. Even if you don't know Skid Row, it's not like they're the most famous band in the world. But his voice, if you just listen to 18 and Life or something, his voice is insane. It's so good. And he really does sing in the higher range, and it's just amazing.
Yeah, isn't it?
Yeah. And he says at some point when he's in the choir, and later on, he's probably in the school choir by then, and he feels his voice going. He's so determined not to get kicked out of the choir that he spends hours and hours practicing singing at a higher pitch so they won't kick him out of the choir, which totally works for him. And then basically he's sort of stuck in a high-pitched range for the rest of his life, which explains how he got there. Yeah. It served him well.
Yeah, he really got singled out there. They noticed what a fantastic singer he was.
Yeah.
And there was a big concert and they needed somebody to solo on Once in Royal David City. And they chose him to do it. And he said afterwards that everyone, even the older kids, were coming up to him and saying, wow, you've got an amazing voice. So he's young at this point, and he's already being singled out for having a brilliant vocal range.
He is. So everything was going all right for him, let's face it. And then in 1978, when he's 10 years old, and I would say this is the turning point of this entire book, this entire man's life, he finds out his parents are getting divorced and his dad's going to leave. And he just gets up and goes upstairs and gets a hammer and smashes in a whole wall in their house. And he says his dad comes upstairs and just watches him and lets him do it. Right, so he's not normal anyway, right, I'd say. He does talk about this insane energy he's got. He's one of those people who's got the energy that we always wonder about because we don't have it quite as much. Because they're abnormal, these energy people. Like at this exact point, which is pivotal, he is so obsessed with Kiss, and he just... Actually, it's two things. His dad leaves, but then his dad takes him to the Kiss concert when he's 10. And it's the last time his whole family were ever together. His dad had come back to take them, and his mum goes, the sister goes. And right as the gig starts, he just grabs this boy under his arm and just runs over the barrier and right through the throng to the front of the stage. So it's like the two things, because he says he has therapy later, and they go, oh, that explains it. The worst thing ever that happened to him happens at the same time as the best thing that ever happens to him. And it's almost like that's the spider that bit him that became Spider-Man. That's the moment where he just turns into a rock star that can't turn back and can't deal with his feelings. And I actually reckon he was 10 years old for the rest of his life. I reckon this book is written by a 10-year-old who's constantly like in awe of his heroes and never really values his own worth. You know what I mean? This whole book is like, I couldn't believe I was talking to Axl Rose. I can't believe I'm sat next to Steve Tyler. You know, do you think that?
I kind of thought there's a certain immaturity in this whole book, in his behaviour, but then he's always, as we find out, he gets fame very young. He's always at least 5 years younger, 10 years younger than most other people in the room at any time.
He is, actually. He definitely is.
So I think that keeps him as the kid in a social situation.
Yes,
he's the young one.
That's true.
So I think that kind of happens as well. So I think you're right. I think he's kind of kept as the youngest. So, yeah, he's not maturing in any way. Yeah, no, I think that's very intuitive of you to say that he stayed as a 10-year-old.
Yeah, I couldn't help feeling it all the way through.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does. Because he actually says that was just escapism, all that music. It was fancy, it was theatre, and it filled the void.
Yeah.
You know, and that sort of makes sense.
Then he ends up going to a boarding school, doesn't he?
Yeah, what is he then? It's like 12.
And I wonder if that's because he was playing up so much.
Yes, that's very likely.
Because he doesn't tell us everything. He doesn't tell us everything about his childhood. Like when he smashes up that wall with a hammer, that's seemingly the first thing like that he does. And you kind of think there must have been signs that something like that might be happening, maybe.
Yeah.
His dad was always quite strict on him, even though he was a bohemian parent. when he got a bad grade at school, his dad was driving him home from school and they found out he had a bad grade. His dad stopped the car and made him walk like 2 miles home on his own. And so there is some very strict parenting going on here.
Yeah, you're right.
And so then I wonder if he is lashing out and like playing up, because then he ends up going to this boarding school.
Yeah, that's very likely.
Which he hates. He actually says, I don't think there's a single boy who went to boarding school that came out unscathed, because it's just bullying.
Yeah.
And we know this from reading other books. It's
We really
kind of
do.
child abuse sending your kids to boarding school.
I know. Yeah. It's like sending him to prison.
Yeah, it really is. It's horrible.
It's a school version of prison.
He said that the older boys would pick on the younger boys, like Sebastian was just working at a desk one day and one of the older kids come along, grabbed him by the hair and was smashing his face into the desk and everyone laughed. And Sebastian actually said, he's a big kid, he's tall. And he said, so he didn't get the worst of it. But he totally recognises that most people that go to boarding school is just a horrible experience.
It's crap. It really is.
Yeah.
And they put him up a grade as well, so then he got really teased.
Yeah.
And that's just a nightmare, because then you're different again, aren't you?
And you're not with your peer group. It's really difficult.
Yeah, it's terrible.
So at this boarding school, they do this really odd thing, which I'd never heard of before, where they send the boys out for 2 weeks on a really old, like, battalion sailing ship on the Great Lakes.
This must be a Canadian thing.
Yeah, and it also should probably a thing before health and safety came in for looking after children, because it sounds terrifying. Yeah. They literally were almost capsizing in a massive storm. Yeah. And they're sent out onto the rigging to keep oh my God, it sounded like a nightmare. But anyway, one of the downtimes there, he heard this acoustic guitar playing, and there was a kid sat at the top on the bird's nest of the ship. I think it was an acoustic version of a Led Zeppelin song or something. And Sebastian thought, wow, what's that? And he climbed up the rigging, and there was a kid up there called Tony. And basically, they started a band together.
Brilliant.
Then when they got back to school, they would be singing in their dorm room, and the older kids would hear it, and they'd come in and they would say, wow, do you two want to be in our band? Because the older kids had a band, and they ended up playing a school dance. Now, because it was a boys' school, there was a girls' school down the road, and they used to bus in the girls for the boys' dance, isn't it? It sounds like arranged marriages or something, doesn't it? Like you got the boys' school and the girls' school, and then you're going to bus the girls in for the school disco. Yeah. Anyway, so Sebastian is like 14, singing. This is his first public appearance, singing at the school dance, and people are completely wowed by him, to the point that when the gig is over, there's a queue of girls desperate to meet him. And Sebastian's like, right, I'm doing this for the rest of my life.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But then he gets expelled for mooning out of the back of the bus because it was his turn to moon. Everyone would be mooning. It's his turn. And he moons, and then he looks with horror at the car behind it. It's his teacher. She just happens to be driving behind the bus. Really bad luck, so he gets expelled.
Yeah, he was destined for a rock and roll lifestyle, wasn't he? Let's face it.
He is destined for life on a tour bus, yeah. Yeah, so then he has a few years knocking about back home before he auditions.
Not that many years.
Not that many years. Like, 1 year.
Yeah.
I don't even know.
Just a lot happens, so
yeah,
it seems
it's about
like
a year, actually.
A lot.
Yeah, that's true. It seemed like ages when you were there. Yeah, but he gets in this band called Herrenvolk. And they're already a sort of established band in Toronto, so he moves to Toronto, aged 14. And later on, he's like, oh, I felt really superior to my mates to Skid Row because I'd already lived in Toronto and I'd lived with hookers and done this and done that. And you're like, he lived with an aunt.
Yeah.
His parents would only let him go if he'd live with his aunt and if he would take singing lessons once a week, which he did.
To protect his voice.
Yeah. Which is absolutely brilliant because he really needed that for his career, for doing night after night world tours.
It's a curious thing that his mum and dad divorced, and they have this kid at the age of like 14 has been expelled from school, and he wants to go to Toronto and live with his aunt to be a full-time rock star. I mean, the fact that his dad said, okay, as long as you take singing lessons. I mean, I do think that there is this unspoken thing in the book where he's totally out of control and the dad's just like, do you know what? just let's try it because this just might work for him because nothing else is working. Because it is quite a bizarre thing for a parent to agree to.
Yeah, that's true. Because he was already taking acid, drinking, all of that. He was taking acid from when he was about, I don't know, yeah, from about 14, 13, 14. Yeah, you're right. And the other side of it, I wonder, is whether he actually was made to go to school in Toronto.
Okay.
You don't definitely know. It doesn't take all your time, does it, being in a band? You could rehearse evenings.
Yeah.
You finish school at, 4 o'clock? You got a lot... You know what I mean? He might be making it sound more rock and roll than it is. I don't know. He's basically not telling us one way or the other.
Yeah, I think there's more going on.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good origin story for a rock and roll superstar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mind that he doesn't tell us that he might have been having classes at the same time. That's boring.
Yeah.
You know?
But he was definitely drinking, taking drugs, and being wild. He totally is, yeah.
He certainly is a teenage tearaway. Yeah, for sure. And also, he's like 6'4".
Yeah, you see the pictures of him, and he's like, bloody hell, he's only 16 or 14. He just looks older and stunning. And his hair is spiked up to the roof, and his makeup, and he just looks fantastic. It's unbelievable. Yeah, anyway, okay, so he changed the name of Herrenvolk to Kid Wicked.
Yeah, it's a good name.
And that's important in case anyone wants to Google it. Yeah. And then they were touring Canada, Quebec, Ontario, all that. They kind of got in the rock circle of Canada. They were doing all right. He just wanted to be bigger. He was ambitious, so he auditioned for this band called Madam X that were in Detroit. If you look at a map, it's weird to us, but Canada is like Toronto's just above Detroit. They're like an hour away or something. They're neighbours.
Aren't they connected by a bridge?
They might be. I don't know. I've never tried to travel from one to the other.
Didn't Diana Ross tell us there was a bridge?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
Because Diana Ross was
exactly
in Detroit.
what they did. They popped
and Madonna's in Detroit as well.
Yeah, Madonna. Yeah. And I thought that was very interesting because Madonna is from Detroit and she called herself Madam X after a while.
Oh, didn't she?
Quite recently, yeah. So, but anyway, it sounds epic that he travelled all the way into America, but actually it's just across the road.
Yeah, it's just across the road.
Yeah. And he joined that band and they toured Madam X, they toured America. So he had quite a wild time with them. And they were all older.
Yeah, because let's not lose sight of the fact that he is 16 years old at the moment.
Yeah, he's 16. He was playing in bands he shouldn't be allowed in.
No, he shouldn't legally be allowed in those bars.
Oh, that's what I meant.
But he's 6'4" and his hair is even taller and he's got high heels on. I mean, he's the tallest person in the state.
He was saying, he was about 7 foot when all was finished.
So nobody's going to think, oh, that 16-year-old kid, he can't come in.
You'd never, ever think that. No
you
way.
Never would. You think that's a member of the Addams family. But so he's getting really good experience of going around and fronting a rock band. But he's a natural anyway. And people know that he's good. But when he's with Madam X, it sounds like there are some frictions in the band. And, some of the gigs they play, they're literally playing on a 4x4 stage. They're all crammed together. It's really tiny. And they basically, I just get that there are some frictions in the group. And I think at one point on stage, one of them spits in his face.
Yeah, and that's when he walks out. Yeah, he
quits.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he's back in town, back home, when he goes to sing at a wedding with his mate from Madam X, isn't it?
There's a rock photographer called Mark Weiss who photographs all of the rock bands, and he photographed Madam X, and he was getting married.
Oh, that's it, yeah.
So Sebastian is going to the wedding with other members of Madam X, but there's also at this wedding, there are other, what's his name, Zakk Wylde is there, lots of people from the world of heavy metal are at this wedding, including Jon Bon Jovi's parents, because this photographer knows all of them.
Yeah.
And so there are various people from the heavy metal industry at this wedding, and there's a wedding band, and young Sebastian is with Zakk Wylde, and they're drinking, and they all take it in turns singing with the wedding band. And Sebastian gets up, I don't know what he sings, but then Jon Bon Jovi's parents say, come over, we want to talk to you. And they say, our friend has a band who we think you'd be a really good fit for.
I think they say, our son's friend's got a band. Because it's their son's Bon Jovi. It's like so weird. Our son's friend. No, it isn't. It's this bloke called Dave Sabo. He grew up with Bon Jovi. I actually Googled him to get the in-depth story. Because they literally went to school together and they were mates. And then Dave Sabo actually played in Bon Jovi's band right up until he got replaced by Richie Sambora.
Oh, no kidding. Right.
So then he started his own band, Skid Row.
Oh, okay.
And so he'd started Skid Row, and that's when John Bon Jovi's parents say, our son's friend, because they obviously knew him really well, because, growing up around their house, I imagine.
Right.
They were all from New Jersey. It was this whole New Jersey thing.
That was a whole scene, wasn't it, at the time?
The whole scene. Yeah. And the singer that was in Skid Row at the time is called Matt Fallon. He had come from Anthrax to join Skid Row.
Did he?
Yeah.
Is he better now?
And they'd done really well in gigs. Like, they were quite popular on the circuit. They just hadn't recorded anything. But he just left the band, and I don't exactly know why. So they were looking for a singer. And so, yeah, thanks to John Bon Jovi's parents, a tape got past the Skid Row, and they liked what they heard and flew him over to New Jersey. And the rest is history. And pretty soon after he joined, because he is so amazing, and he would have brought loads to those songs. His voice, what he brought to it is huge, because obviously he doesn't say, but they must have had some arguments about who gets money for what. Like, he wanted writing credit for just how much he added. But he doesn't really go into it, I'm glad to say. But there's obviously stuff going on with that.
Oh, yeah, he totally says, he was young. In all fairness, he was so young at this point.
Yeah.
And as Skid Row become hugely successful and make all that money, they realise they're being stiffed and diddled.
They're being stiffed and diddled completely. Yes.
You're right, he doesn't go into it at length, but he does say they just assumed somebody was looking after it for them, which I think you kind of would if you're so busy touring the world.
You're absolutely busy touring, singing, and being off your head. How are you?
And he's a teenager as well. He is naive.
And he's living the dream.
It's fine to be naive when you're that age.
I know, it's a shame it all goes to misery. But yeah, they got signed to Atlantic almost straight away. Oh, it was with help from John Bon Jovi, actually, which I read online because he likes to take all the credit. But I think they were really helped.
Yeah.
John Bon Jovi's a really part of them, isn't he? He's calling around at rehearsals in his
Well, that kind of makes sense now. If you say that Dave Sabo was originally in Bon Jovi and then Bon Jovi, the band, were massively successful and that was John Bon Jovi's childhood friend, then he's looking after his friend. That's really cool.
Totally is. Yeah, totally is. So he's got him on the same label. He's given him a leg up. And the first thing they do after recording that album, because he joined in 1987, in 1989, they tour with Bon Jovi, but Dave the Snake, he really didn't want. He kept saying, "No, I don't want to tour with you. I want to make it on our own." And then Sebastian go, "Why would you say no to touring with Bon Jovi?"
Yeah.
He doesn't get it. I get it.
No, not as a support act. I think that's fine. I don't think that's necessarily relying on Bon Jovi for your success.
No, not at all. And on that tour, they outsold Bon Jovi with their merch, which really proves that they really took off.
Yeah.
Outsold Bon Jovi, that's insane. In 1989? That'll be the slippery when wet or whatever. Even I was listening to Bon Jovi then.
You know that happened with Tiffany and New Kids on the Block.
Did it?
I don't know why I know this, but do you remember Tiffany, like in the end of the 1980s?
Yeah.
She was massive, right? And the New Kids on the Block with a new unknown band, and they supported her on tour.
Oh.
So they toured America. By the end of the tour, they had to make the decision. New Kids on the Block were becoming so popular that they switched them. So they headlined and she became their support act on the tour.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awful. Yeah. You know what? They had better choreography.
Oh, Tiffany's hand dance. Everybody knows
Think of
that.
Tiffany's hand dance.
It's iconic.
Which was brilliant. I'd love to have been at that gig.
Anyway, so Skid Row are the New Kids on the Block to Bon Jovi's Tiffany.
Yes.
Well, they kind of are the New Kids on the Block, aren't they?
Oh, my God, they are, yeah.
And then 18 of Life really hits big on MTV, doesn't it? And I don't think it's lost on the fact that he's just so dreamy.
Yeah, but they're cracking tunes. They're anthemic tunes.
They are anthemic,
really
but
are,
interestingly...
for a generation, you know.
Yeah, but their first two massive hits, which they become known for, are essentially rock ballads.
Yeah.
They're not like heavy songs, are they?
Well, 18 Life and I Remember You. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Because he does say they kind of got annoyed that they were known as a ballad band.
Yeah.
And that's why their second album went really heavy and basically alienated half of their fans. That's not how they meant to be.
So they do well over the next few years. They kind of stay as a support act, but it's like they upgrade every single time they're supporting an even bigger band.
Yeah.
Which is a really good way of growing your own audience and becoming a massive band yourself.
Yeah, it's funny because this is when all these bands are his absolute total heroes. Motley Crue couldn't even believe it. He was even get to meet them. And they're on their Dr. Feelgood tour. I mean, they're all at their height. And they were sober. It's like, no, because he's got this idea of rock and roll. You have to be off your head, drink yourself to death. And
well, he is off his head.
He is off his head because he thinks that's what you do and he wants to be like his heroes. But Motley Crue had got sober at that time. We read their book, didn't we? And they were just going to die, basically. So they were all had to sober up for this tour. So he was really did his best to get them off track, but they stayed on track.
Yeah, it's as well, he is, I mean, I guess more than 10 years younger than Motley Crue. So they've done their rock and roll thing.
Yeah.
And they're sober now because of that. But he's just up and coming and he wants to have his rock and roll debauchery, but quite often he's the only drunk one in the room.
Yeah.
And when I say drunk, he's like properly off his head.
He really is. Off his face. Yeah. And then he even meets Gene Simmons, his absolute total and utter hero from Kiss. And Gene Simmons is sober and tells him not to drink because it's not cool and he's got to look after his voice. And he's like, what? My heroes are rubbish.
Yeah, they all learnt the hard way, didn't they, I guess?
Yeah, they'd all been there and done it and realised they would probably die. Who else was it they were on tour with that had gone sober? There's someone else.
Aerosmith.
Yeah,
Aerosmith
that's right.
Sober when they toured with them.
Yeah.
But they were like 20 years in the game at that point. Yeah, I guess it just comes a point where, I mean, let's face it, like when we were younger, we probably hit partying a lot harder than we do now.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I don't party at all anymore.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And that's where he's at. If some 19-year-old suddenly bounded up to me and was like, yeah, let's crack the bottle open, let's get absolutely... I'm like, go home. I've got my slippers on. You would, wouldn't you?
Yeah, he's almost a generation behind, isn't he?
He is. He almost is, yeah. But he finds his peoples, like Metallica, the Vars, Ulrich, a lot of stories with him. Axl, he manages to get absolutely wrecked with all the time. Axl's a good party person for him. Axl Rose, he's got enough Guns N' Roses, yeah, he's got enough pals. Do you know what I really like the story when they were supporting Bon Jovi, and there's like a bit of war going on between the crew, and at one point someone nabs him and pours milk all over his head just as he's about to go on, over Sebastian Bach's head. And then he goes on stage and they start throwing bottles at each other in the middle of the show, him and the crew. And at one point he calls him John Bon Blow Me. And then after the gig, he describes like this massive Reservoir Dogs entourage coming towards him. John, his brother, his parents, I don't know, like everyone.
Yeah, his parents, I know, that's so funny.
They're going to kill him.
Well, because, you know what, Bon Jovi have given them the support slot.
They have.
And then he really is biting the hand that feeds him at that point.
Yes.
And he's getting so out of control drunk. And I think I think half the reason he had this prank where he had loads of milk thrown on him just before he goes on stage, I think it's because people kind of might even hate him at this point.
Yeah, I reckon you're right. I think,
because he's a kid, he's off his head all the time, and we know that he does have obnoxious behaviour. He's been expelled from school, he's been kicked out of bands before. So I think he's playing up, and I think the crew are fed up of him, and I think let's show him. I mean, that's a pretty out of order thing to do just before somebody's about to go on stage to throw a gallon of milk on their head, because his hair is amazing. So I don't blame him for being angry, actually. And I don't blame him for acting up, but I think it shows that people were probably very fed up of him.
Yeah, agreed.
So this entire book, like, I'm getting confused now because Skid Row have supported Bon Jovi, Aerosmith, Motley Crue, Guns N' Roses, and he's hanging out with all of these people. This happens, I guess, over a 5-6 year period, and I can't remember the order in which it all happens. But there's a lot of stories in this book, right?
There's tons of stories. There's tons of your usual debauchery, women being treated like crap, all of the usual stuff, fights, loads of fights. The difference between this and other rock and roll biographies that we've read is that normally everyone's off their head. But the weird thing about Sebastian Bach's story is that he's hanging out with bands who are completely sober, and he's the only one. So he's like, they call him the Basmanian Devil, don't they? Yeah.
Because that's what he's like.
Yes,
that cartoon where the Tasmanian Taz goes
Yeah.
around like a whirlwind, disrupting everything.
Yes,
oh,
right.
It's just occurred to me that's why they call him that, because he is fucking pain in the ass. And he's destructing everything wherever he goes.
He really is. And I think you'll find that the probable reason, because he doesn't really explain why the band kick him out in 1996, but the probable reason is they don't do drugs, the other band members. They might have drinks and have a good time, party, but they don't do drugs, and he's really taking everything there is, except heroin, which is lucky for him. But yeah, so it'd just be annoying. It'd just be really annoying. I did read a thing because I was like, oh, I wonder if they will ever get back together, because the end of this book he's heavily hinting that he's up for it. So I googled, will they ever get back together? The band are all like, gone through many different singers. They've obviously never hit the right singer ever again, but they're like, yeah, but we're much happier
without him.
Yeah.
Oh, do you know what I think illustrates the difference between him and everybody else in heavy rock at this moment? Is what we read about in the Motley Crue book, is where they all got flown out to do the rock to Russia because their manager was in lots of trouble for, wasn't he running drugs or something? And Russia said to him, we won't charge you if you come over and do this big concert for free to promote sobriety.
Yeah, right. Let's get the worst drunks over to promote sobriety. That's insane.
But they all do, don't they? Like Motley Crue and Bon Jovi, they all go over and they do this concert and there's no alcohol in the place. But young Sebastian, he's still wants to drink, and he manages somehow to get a couple bottles of vodka.
You can always get vodka in Russia.
Yeah, where everybody is being very good and being sober on this tour, which is literally promoting sobriety. He's found a bottle of vodka, and he's off his head. One of the security guards grabs a bottle of vodka from him, which makes him like insane. The manager is in a big press conference with the world's media in there being interviewed about how good what they're doing to fight alcoholism. And Sebastian Bach storms in, opens the door and shouts, "Where's my fucking bottle of vodka?"
Oh my God, then a chase ensues. It's a proper cartoon chase in my mind.
Yeah, isn't it?
All the backstage arena corridors.
And he says he barricades himself into a room when they smash through it, because the manager's brother used to be an NFL player. And they come in and they throw him against the wall and they say, "What do you think?" You said, "Look, this kid is out of control."
Yeah. And whoever, I can't remember who it is, who's actually got on top of him, holding him down, actually crying on him. He says, tears were falling on me. And he was saying, "You're just too much, you're out of control." And he's actually crying.
Yeah.
So it's like they want him to stop. They don't want him to be this mad. Yeah.
Yeah, but ultimately what happens, Tommy Lee is sober and has to stay sober. Tommy Lee from Motley Crue.
Yes.
And they're really pissed off because they said it was really going to be an equal billing and nobody was having pyrotechnics or anything. And anyway, so Motley Crue do their low-key gig. And then when Bon Jovi come on at the end, there's fireworks, big explosions. So they really look like the headliners. This makes Tommy Lee so angry. And then Sebastian's got another bottle of vodka and he gives it to Tommy Lee. And he swigs it after being sober for so long and really struggling with sobriety. Tommy Lee gets so drunk, he goes and punches the manager out.
Bloody hell.
And they have to charter a separate plane home from Russia because Motley Crue can't be on the same plane as Bon Jovi.
Oh, my God.
It's such drama. I love it.
Oh, my God. Meanwhile, the crowd favourite was Ozzy Osbourne anyway.
Yeah.
Like by miles, they said. It was just all about Ozzy. Everyone's chanting Ozzy.
Everybody loves Ozzy.
Yeah. Yeah, so basically in 1996, they kick him out.
They do, yeah. I probably was a long time coming.
He's out.
This is interesting about the cutthroat music industry. So Skid Row kick out Sebastian Bach. Right? And then Sebastian's like, okay, I'm solo now. I'm going to get a solo band together. And he goes off and does a guest spot on somebody else's tour. And the management phone him up and say, "What the hell do you think you're doing?" And he said, "But I'm not with Skid Row anymore." And they said, "Yeah, we still manage you. You can't just go and do this without telling us." And it turns out that management, when that split happened, management kept Sebastian on their books, but they didn't look after Skid Row anymore.
Yeah.
Which basically tells you where the talent in that band is.
Yeah, exactly.
The management company look after Sebastian Bach and they let Skid Row go.
Yeah, exactly. So then he just basically got a band together and then went off and did solo gigs. And then Pantera, because he'd taken Pantera on tour with Skid Row, he'd advocated for them, and then they took him on tour as a sort of thanks. So yeah,
that was debauchery, though, wasn't it? They were drinking. That was the tour that he wanted.
Yeah,
he always wanted to just
That's
go.
the dream.
Yeah, that was a dream.
Yeah,
finally touring with a band who get off their heads.
Who could drink him under the table? Yeah.
Oh my God, he said they did like 10 shots each before they even got on stage.
Yeah, because the difference is he used to not drink and like gargle and do all that good stuff for his voice and only get wrecked after the gig. Whereas this lot, yeah, were absolutely ruined the entire time. Yeah, he was loving it. He was absolutely loving it. And then basically he experimented with a few other musicians, did some music with the Smashing Pumpkins, all sorts. He said it didn't really work.
And then he does some... Ace Frehley from Kiss phones him up and says, will you come and write with me in the studio? And he's like, oh my God, this is like literally my hero since the age of 10.
Yeah.
And so he finally gets to work with Kiss. Well, Ace from Kiss. And they write a lot in the studios. And he was so excited, but it kind of came to nothing. The songs they did together, even though he loved them, they didn't end up on Ace's solo album. So he was...
Yeah.
I'm a bit sad about that.
Until 10, 15 years later or some ridiculous amount of time, he listens to Ace's new album and he's really excited. It's a solo album he's done. And there's that song with the name changed. But there's all the song they wrote together on the album with no credit to him, no mention.
Yeah.
That's shit. That is shit.
It's real shit, actually.
Yeah.
He was stiffed and diddled again.
It's bloody was. He bloody was.
But he let that go. He said, you know what? He let it go. He didn't pursue it because he was just like, he just had the personal thing of thinking, wow, I ended up on...
Yeah, he's still
album.
A hero. And he got it down in his autobiography, so the facts are out there.
Yeah.
Then
he
there's
gets
a really
real
change. Yeah.
Yes, there's a real change of career here.
Total change. There's a new millennium and he gets asked to be in a Broadway show, Jekyll and Hyde. They were basically at that point where they put in famous people to draw in new audiences.
Yeah.
And he'd never done anything like it. And they basically trained him. They had a really good director who trained him how to act, taught him not to play to the crowd, all that stuff that Donny Osmond had to go through to do Joseph. And Jekyll and Hyde's hard because you're literally playing two people, a split personality. And sounds like he absolutely nailed it. And musically, they brought it up to his key as well. So musically, it would have been stunning.
Yeah, I wonder if this is unprecedented, really, because, okay, Donny Osmond being in a musical, that's no big leap, really. But to have a hard rocker on Broadway, has that ever been done before?
First time, no. He said it was the first hard rock man to make it in a Broadway show ever, in the history of ever. That's what he said.
And is this pre or post David Hasselhoff? Because we've read his book and we know that he played Jekyll and Hyde.
I think he was in it for a few months, and the person who came in afterwards to replace him was the Hoff. And he had to show David Hasselhoff his track backstage. He had to walk him around and show him when he does wig changes and walk him through the part. So he handed the reign over to the Hoff.
Also, what an odd change to go from Sebastian Bach to David Hasselhoff. And do you know what? I've watched David Hasselhoff do this on YouTube, and he's fucking amazing.
Yes.
I need to go and look at Sebastian Bach doing it.
But it doesn't really matter in a way. It's because it draws in those fans, you know. So people will buy tickets to see that person in that show. Then when the next person comes in, those fans, and if anyone's just gone for the show, they won't care who's in it. So it just really keeps things alive. As long as they're good.
He really thrived in this, didn't he?
It really changed his life, yeah. And also because he could relate to it, because it was about this man experimenting on himself with drugs to save his dad's life. And at that time, his dad had cancer, so it was really emotional and stuff. Yeah, plus he was a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde anyway. You know?
Yeah, he was. He said he really struggled with the rehearsing, you know, like on Broadway, obviously, so much is at stake that you rehearse everything, each fine detail, and he really struggled with it to the point that the night before his first performance, he went out on the town and got off his head.
Yeah.
And he says actually he thinks that really helped because it just meant he completely relaxed and then went back on stage with a hangover. But he said it's perfect to play Jekyll and Hyde with a hangover.
Yeah, that's right.
You can use it to your advantage.
And he also said he was worried that the theatre would just be really tame and they wouldn't party, but he found they could party with the rest of them. Which they can, theatre people. They can drink.
Yeah.
this point, 9/11 happens, and it's so dramatic how he describes it. He's like, the towers came down and I had to get my kids and I drove to the school. I've got to save my kids, so I got them and I phoned my ex-wife. Yeah. Oh, we haven't even mentioned he had kids. He had kids when he was like, what, 16, 17 or something? He had his first kid. Totally ridiculous. He blatantly wasn't there for them. That's enough said. So anyway, he grabbed his kids out of school and he's like, right, and he grabs his ex-wife. I've got to drive us to Canada. We're going to get out of here. The world's going to end. We're going to go and stay with my dad all the way in Canada. And they got 2 hours drive away. And then they stopped in a hotel because he wanted a beer. So he found himself in a hotel pool with his kids and drinking beer in the pool. Turns out, basically, he'd driven himself to right where that other plane had gone down.
Yeah.
Which isn't funny, but it's just...
I found that really weird, like his state of panic. I understand that you don't know what's happening. You don't know if a nuclear bomb's even going to be dropped. You want to get your kids and you want to get out there as soon as possible. But the thing that stopped his escape
was needing a beer.
Was that he wanted a beer.
That's to me, it's like, isn't that a bit embarrassing? You tell this whole escape story, the drama.
Yeah.
But you only get like halfway down the highway and you have to stop and check into a hotel, basically still in major danger. It's like, what? Because a beer's more important than saving your kids.
Yeah.
And that basically sums it up.
Yeah, doesn't it, hey? Anyway, then of course, 9/11 kind of killed Broadway because people were too nervous to start going back out. And that's when he started getting offers for other musicals. I guess this where I know that they were already casting what they call stunt casting, putting celebrities in lead roles rather than musical theatre people. Do you think this is where it really took off because Broadway were desperate to get people back into the theatre?
No, I think they've been doing it for ages. They get stars off TV and all sorts. I think it just sells tickets.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. But also he has an amazing voice. Yeah, he's an amazing face and an amazing voice. And he must have done really well in Jekyll and Hyde, I reckon.
Yeah, no, he did.
Because they actually wanted to give him Frankenfurter in Rocky Horror Show. They wanted him to do that, which is would have been incredible. But he couldn't sing it. It was too high for him and they wouldn't change the register. Yeah. Oh, my God, it would have... Imagine that. It would have been amazing. So he ends up doing Riff Raff, which is still a good song, and that's the one who sings the Time Warp.
Yeah, but he did say that when he realised that, when they offered that to him, he thought, oh, it's only one song. I actually don't want to go to all that trouble for one song every night.
Yeah.
And he said, if they make it worth my while, I'll do it. He said, get them to double the money, not thinking they'd ever do it. And they did.
Yeah, they did.
So that shows how good he was and what a success he must have been in Jekyll and Hyde, that they were willing to double his fee to play what is essentially a one-song character.
Small part, yeah, smaller part. Yeah.
So he's becoming a musical theatre fixture, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. Yeah. The next thing he does, it's a while later, is Jesus Christ Superstar.
Yeah.
And he plays Jesus, but then he actually realises afterwards he should have been Judas.
Right. Who was played by Carl Anderson in this.
Yeah.
But he's brilliant at Jesus, though, isn't he?
He is brilliant as Jesus. He does really well in it as well. And he was in it 6 months and touring with it and stuff. And I think he just gets tired. It sounds like, because he ended up walking out of it, but he said he probably just needed a day off because you're literally doing 8 shows a week.
Also, his dad was dying at this point,
and
right?
his dad was dying. He's doing 8 shows a week. It's really rough. But also, they said that at the end, like, they finished the whole show and it's all emotional, and then they come on to do a sort of greatest hits of the show, and everyone gets up and there's a sing-along. And he gets everyone clapping. He's basically a rock star right at the end. They're saying to him, don't clap. Jesus wouldn't clap.
Jesus wouldn't clap.
And what I'm reading between the lines is he's probably refusing to not be the rock star at the end because he's going, I'm out of character now. It's the end. And they're obviously saying, don't go out of character at the end. So they ended up re-rehearsing the end so that Carl Anderson as Judas comes and takes the final bow. So he gets the big moment and switches it from Sebastian Bach getting the big moment and stop him clapping. And that's when he walks out. Jesus wouldn't clap.
Jesus wouldn't clap. But I also got the feeling, like reading between the lines there's something going on. Carl Anderson does take him to one side at one point. He kind of becomes a father figure to him.
Yes.
But also, when you cast Sebastian Bach in a musical, you get a lot of metal fans in the audience.
Yes. Oh, yes, they're all screaming.
Yeah, they're kind of not behaving in the way that a musical theatre audience would.
No, that's right.
And I think it's starting to really grate on other cast members because it kind of subverts the show a bit.
Yeah, it
does. I kind of feel like they feel like they're in the Sebastian Bach show rather than
Yeah.
Jesus Christ Superstar. And it's getting up Carl Anderson's nose because, of course, he's amazing and a star in his own right.
Yeah.
But also, reading between the lines, I wonder if there's just some obnoxious behaviour going on backstage because Sebastian Bach does have obnoxious behaviour.
Yeah, definitely.
I wonder if they're just fed up with him at this point. I wonder if he's leaving because he wants to, or whether they're demoting him and because they want him to go.
Well, it could be that, and he's the fake, he hasn't been to drama school, he isn't a musical theatre, there's a scene where Jesus gets whipped and it is awful, and people cry and it's terrible, but his fans were loving him being whipped.
Yeah, they say, do it harder.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of ruining the show.
Yeah, it is ruining the show.
Yeah.
That's not his fault, though.
It's not actually his fault. No, it's not his fault.
Anyway, regardless of it, he was just really good, wasn't he?
He was really good at being Jesus. He absolutely nailed it.
No.
Wrong. Yeah, I was going to say, he did all sorts of other jobs. He did loads of reality shows, and he was in the Gilmore Girls. That was a big hit. He was playing in a band in
Never
that.
seen it. Do you know that?
Yeah, I watched a bit of it.
He was in it for like 8 seasons. So like a whole generation of people totally know him from the Gilmore Girls rather than Skid Row, right?
Yeah, weird. And then he was in, I think, maybe only one episode of the Trailer Park Boys, which is a Canadian cult show.
Uh-huh.
Canadians will totally know the Trailer Park Boys, and they will know him from that one scene where it's something about model railways. I haven't seen it. I googled it, couldn't find it. He made an impact, and he made friends with them all, and they all went on the Guns N' Roses tour bus with him after that. Yeah. So yeah, he's doing all right.
Yeah, so he's had a real
eclectic life, and he's only 56 now. He's not too old. He's hopefully got a lot of years ahead of him. Seems like he's stopped drinking.
I see he's still performing now, isn't he? Because I went on to YouTube to check out some of his vocals and stuff, and actually a lot of the stuff that came up has been filmed at festivals in the last couple of years. So he's still out there.
Still got it.
Being a rock star, yeah.
And the book ends with him being hopeful that Skid Row will want him back, but they just won't. It seems very unlikely.
They've had enough.
Yeah. So watch this space. He might be in Mary Poppins next. That's about his range.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Thrift Shop Biography. We love making this podcast, and we're absolutely thrilled that so many of you are already listening. You could really help us out by leaving us a review somewhere, wherever you listen to this podcast. And if you could share us, tell your friends about us, or drop some links on social media. We have a Facebook page called Thrift Shop Biography, so make sure you come over there to hear about the episodes first and what else we're up to. Okay, see you next week. And if you're new here, there are loads more episodes now to go and listen in the back catalogue, so make sure you go and enjoy them. Okay, thank you very much.